Hi everyone, this is Isabelle and
Daniel.
hello my friends. I think you guys are really going to like this presentation. And some of you are really focused on right and wrong and truth. What's a lie? What's the truth? What is the truth? Just the facts. And this is such a beautiful deep dive around that subject. I just wanted to share with you my non-physical team. I am a psychic. I channel. Daniel is also a psychic and channels. And what that means, just to level set, some of you who are maybe new to this, a channeler is someone who has the ability to access universal knowledge, to access their inner being, to access non-physical entities, because we are eternal and multidimensional. Our non-physical entities can be called angels or spirit guides or inner beings or my main two guides are Athena and Isis, the goddesses of Athena and Isis. And Daniel is the Oracle, and the Oracle is a very old group of entities. Daniel's part of my soul family. Yes, everyone, there are many levels of families, and there are many levels of many things. And we wanted to bring this to your attention. Let me start off with this presentation of the introduction. We have been conditioned to believe that truth is one single frequency. Society dictates that if there are two different accounts of an event, then someone is telling the truth and someone is telling a lie. We take this perception of truth very seriously. Imagine if you were summoned to provide a testimony in a court of law. You would expect to place your hand on a Bible and swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Is it really possible that truth can exist in multiple frequencies and that truth can evolve? This is the question that we would like you to ponder. We are going to go through multiple slides, beautiful imagery. This information is channeled by Daniel, and we are going to discuss a little bit of each slide. But I did want to say that I have many friends that believe in one truth. And the non-physical team has really worked with me to broaden my understanding that what you believe in creates your reality. And this is what I want to bring to your attention, because if you only believe in one certain frequency, you are limiting yourself. Curious, right? You probably didn't even think of yourself limiting yourself in the pursuit of truth, right? Daniel, do you have anything to add to your intro?
Well, just simply that sometimes when you start studying consciousness and spirituality, you really are seeking the truth. So in doing so, you tend to do kind of in a weird way what you did when you were unconscious, which is to seek that one single truth. And my guides, the Oracle, are encouraging you to broaden your perspective, your horizon, to integrate different layers of truth and the expansion of truth. And that truth is not stuck in any dimension, that it evolves, it shifts, and it creates, just like we do, as aspects of source consciousness. And this is what we're going to explore together.
Wonderful. Okay, let's dive in. Now, Let's take a look at something that the ancient Greeks believed to be true in their time. This is a depiction of the inner part of Aristotle's model of the universe from the 4th century BC. As you look at this image, does anything unusual jump out at you? Daniel, I love this image that you picked, and it took me a second to notice what was different around it.
Yes.
What else did you learn about Aristotle when you were researching this?
Well, one interesting thing is that Aristotle considered stars to not move.
Really?
Yes, everything in the outer universe did not move. They were just fixed points of light.
And you know, it's funny. Einstein had the theory of relativity. Einstein really, even though he helped with quantum physics, he was really upset with quantum physics because he also believed the space behaved in a certain way and did not pop in and out of existence. So Niels Bohr uncovered the law of observation. And, you know, Einstein's like, God doesn't play dice. And I believe that the moon is still there whether we look at it. And Niels Bohr would say, you know, don't say God's words, or I forgot. I'm horrible at paraphrasing, everyone. You'll learn that about me as you get to know me. But the interesting thing was, even Einstein had a point of truth. And when it was challenged with another science, even though he helped uncover the science, he couldn't digest it. He couldn't believe that probability, that everything was in flux, that everything goes in and out. Just like Aristotle thought there was fixed stars, because that is what he observed in his lifespan. He couldn't imagine that the stars wouldn't move, right? And now modern science understands that everything is a cycle, and quantum physics is understanding that things actually go in other dimensions. I don't know if you guys are ready for that mind-blowing thing, but that's it. All right, let's go to the next slide. Well, Aristotle got one thing right, that the earth is round. Yet he believed that the earth was the center of the universe, which today we believe to be false. Can you see how things start to get complicated if we hold within our vibration that something is entirely true or entirely false? That is really how I think, Daniel, we were conditioned. We were really conditioned to believe something to be entirely true or entirely false. We were not really, experience kind of helped us along to see perceptions are different with different people. But I don't know until I started to really awakening, looked at truths, because beliefs felt like a truth to me. I didn't imagine that. I guess intellectually I always knew people believed different things than I did.
Yeah.
But I did. Maybe I judged their beliefs as wrong, or maybe I judged my beliefs as wrong. I don't know if I gave it really much thought or nuance to it until I started doing the spiritual work. And then I realized, is it true for everyone? Often when I do my soul work, my friends out there who are listening, one of the things that I say is it true for all 7 billion people on the planet? Is it true? Is there one person having a different experience? Can there be one person having a different experience? Is it more than one person having a different experience? And that allows me to loosen my idea around a particular truth. Do you have a trick like that, Daniel, that you use? Maybe not a trick, Daniel, but when you think something is true, do you pause and examine that truth?
Sometimes I look at what is my position to it. For example, and it could just even be simple things. If something gives me joy, but I see somebody else frowning, then I go, is it true that that thing is positive for everybody?
Very nice.
Yeah. And it could just be little things like that. It didn't have to be anything really philosophical or esoteric. Just in your day-to-day waking life, just really stopping to go, okay, this is my truth, but my truth is not greater than anyone else's truth.
That's right. Everyone's perception is valid. Everyone's journey is valid. It is your judgment when you limit yourself that there is only one truth. You kind of box yourself in. And I know that's weird to think about truths to be boxing you in, because there's that wonderful, awesome saying, the truth shall set you free.
Right. Now, there is one thing that I do want to state at this point for the listeners, is that we're not saying that there is not the truth with the capital T. There are perceptions of truth. And we're going to get into that a little bit later, but we don't want to get the idea that, well, my truth is my truth, your truth is your truth, there's no common ground, because there is universal truth.
There are universal truths. Absolutely. And that rule is my little trick, is 7 billion people experiencing this. I don't know. It's my way to make it, allows me to expand truths, right? Like, we are all eternal, everyone. That is a universal truth for all entities, whether they're on this planet or not. Okay, let's dive into the next slide. Why is Aristotle's model of the universe important for our exploration of truth? Consider that he was one of the foremost scholars in the ancient Western world, and that his views were widely accepted as true. Now, I know what you're probably saying. People back then were simpler and automatically believed what they were taught. That is totally untrue. I know they love to argue and debate and really get into the nitty-gritty. So I think humans have always been questioning and debating and validating theories.
Right, and even on a simpler level, like, for example, I've been to Sicily before, and I just remember being in those towns in Sicily, and there was always a group of, typically older men sitting around kind of like in a half circle, debating certain topics, getting really animated, talking with their hands. So they really, that debating of a subject is very ancient for humans. And it didn't matter if you received a formal education, just there was that questioning that we all have as human beings.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's go into the next slide. Well, let's now consider something that most of us, were taught in grade school. In fact, this may be one of the few things you recall from science class, that there are 3 states of matter: solid, liquid, and gas. Yes, I totally remember that in school. Daniel.
Right, like the one thing you remember from science class.
And you know, another thing that I remember in science class, actually in chemistry, that H2O looks like Mickey Mouse.
Oh, I never realized that. Wow.
Yep, it was the circle with the two little circles for his ears, and I'm
Oh
like,
my
oh,
goodness.
H2O, Mickey Mouse.
There you
Way
go.
cool. Yeah. All right, let's go into the next slide. Let's look at how that model that we believe to be true has evolved. Isn't this incredible? The scientific community is now coming to a consensus that plasma is the most common state of matter in the universe. In our lifetimes, that truth about the three states of matter have shifted. Daniel, the non-physical entities really work with me on plasma. And there is, when they first talked to me about plasma, I was just like, plasma TV? Like, what is going on? And
Right.
plasma, my friends out there, is a higher vibration of a gas. It just vibrates really high. And if you research plasma, you're going to find free energy in plasma. And I had researched plasma. There are entities that live in the plasma of a sun. Her name is Beatrice, and my friend Kimberly Lette channels Beatrice, and she's a plasma being. And there's many different states of matter and form. And our scientific community is catching up to greater understanding, which makes me always excited. Don't forget there's plasma in your blood, which our blood is changing during the ascension. Yes, we're ascending, my friends out there. Some of you know, some of you don't. But it doesn't matter. If you can research plasma, I highly encourage you to do it. Just play with that and see what you uncover. Do you want to add to that plasma knowledge?
Well, the interesting thing about it, so we experience life on Earth and kind of like what the elements are on Earth, and we really don't fully grasp in our awareness that out there in the universe there's so much, I wouldn't say empty space, but space in between the planets, in between the stars. Mm-hmm. And there is what is called dark matter, plasma. Now, this is nothing to be afraid of. It's not dark in that sense. It's just that potentiality of creation of new stars and new planets. And also, too, it is the expansion of the universe, which is the expansion of all that is.
And when they call something dark, guys, just so you know, it's not, ooh, dark evil. No, it just means it doesn't reflect light. And the scientists they uncover it through gravitational fields and different mechanisms because it is not visible to the naked eye. And that is why, even in science, they have spectrometers, I don't know, someone's going to correct me out there, but they have spectrums of devices to read different frequency of light and matter and radioactivity and all sorts of things. I hope that gets you curious out there, my friends. All right, let's listen into the next slide. Now, let's take a look at the areas of our brain, which is my favorite subject, and their role. Some of you may have heard of the lizard or reptilian brain. It governs our fight and flight response and serves as an autopilot. Compare that with the neurocortex, which facilitates our higher level of functions, including consciousness. This is the part of the brain where we reason and rationalize. But can you appreciate how the lizard brain performs the duty of autopilot to allow us to have our higher explorations. So, Daniel, what did you mean by that last sentence?
So what I meant by that last sentence is that that's the most primitive part of the brain. It's like the brain stem. It's the really the bottom of the brain. Mm-hmm. And the thing about it is that as human beings, we tend to gravitate towards the more complex, the more highly evolved. But if we didn't have that part of our brain that was doing all the autopilot, how could we have the higher explorations? And I do want to just segue out of this for just a moment and acknowledge that as human beings, we're conditioned to fear the reptilian or lizard. And I was actually thinking about this a short while ago, and I'm dating myself here, but I remember in the 80s that miniseries V.
I do too. Yeah, I used to watch it.
Yeah, like the reptilian aliens that came down disguised as, human beings, and then they removed the illusion or whatever, and you saw the reptile. So, but, that really is a part of us. That's a part of the evolution that really is serving us, even though we're having these higher explorations. We do need that anchor. We do need that part of the brain that can do the fight or flight. And that's going to be discussed a little bit more in the next slide.
I wanted to share with you listeners that I studied psychology and I got into hypnosis, and we had to study brain waves and the theta state. And it was one of my passions is around studying the human brain. And the reptilian part of us, there's this great documentary. I'm going to see if I can find it for you all and post it, but I think it's like something like Are We a Fish or whatever, because we really evolved from dinosaurs. Our DNA, part of that DNA is within us, even though the dinosaurs were wiped off from our planet. Their genetic codes are with us still. And the ego is to anchor us. So that fight and flight survival is a very important thing. Science will say, you have to understand, everyone, that there are levels of understanding in every field, whether it's science, spirituality, me, Daniel, your understanding. There will always be gaps of understanding. We are broadening your understanding. We are encouraging you to be curious. There is no need to be afraid of the reptilian part of us because it serves its purpose and it's wonderful, and it allows us exploration of the universe, what Daniel was trying to, share with us. All right? Okay, let's go to the next slide. One thing about the lizard brain is that it works in a binary fashion. This is elemental to the fight or flight response. The lizard brain has to make a quick decision in the moment in a dangerous situation where the organism's life is threatened. It simply cannot stop to consider multiple outcomes because every second that passes jeopardizes its chance for survival. I love that you wrote this. A lot of my friends suffer from anxiety, and the fight and flight system is triggered with emotions. People will feel anxious and then have a panic attack. So their adrenal glands kick in. It is a very physiological response. So my friends out there, if you suffer from panic attacks, just know that yes, you are being triggered by a false fight or flight system, because you're usually, you're not going to die going into the grocery store, or you're not going to die calling someone or interacting with someone or being late for work, but it may trigger a panic attack within you where you feel your survival is underway and the fight and flight mechanism gets kicked off within you, and then you just have to go through it as a wave. But this brings the beauty of why it exists in our reality. Daniel, did you want to expand on this?
Oh, definitely. So it's the analogy that we often use in the spiritual community that rational fear would be like you being in the living room and suddenly a lion walks into the living room. That's a rational fear. And that fight or flight response kicks in and we flee. And that's perfectly fine. The issue or the problem comes into play is that when we use that same programming for what we call irrational fears, right? Mm-hmm. But it's not only that. It is also that kind of thinking, the fight or flight, is a binary program. And then we try to use that binary program for all of our levels of thinking, all of our levels of consciousness. And that's where we kind of start to run into issues.
That's right. So the spiritual realm is in the quantum physics. And the quantum physics, my friends, is not binary. Our computers are binary codes. And right now, scientists are working on a quantum computer. And what that means is binary code is on or off. And quantum physics is you are in a dual state. You are neither on nor off. And your computing capabilities is, it's crazy. It's crazy cool. So I encourage you, if you're inspired, to look up quantum computers so that you can understand it. And what we are trying to work with you here is not to think in a binary fashion. On, off, right, wrong, one truth, one lie, false truth, right? Can you see the magic in that? All right, let's go into that next slide. This is truth from a lower perspective. When I look at this slide, my mind automatically conjures up a police detective saying, "Just the facts, ma'am." More on that in a moment. As a collective, humans are hardwired to believe that truth is black and white. It's true or it's not true. This organizing principle helps us make sense of the world we live in, but there are drawbacks. Yeah, I have such the pleasure and delight to know many people that believe that there's only one truth. And I too have experienced thinking that there was one truth. And it's interesting now that I'm playing in the quantum world, I would say there are different states of truth. And it's all perception. But I love how you just, black and white truth, Daniel.
Right. And one thing with this is that I've noticed, at least in my inner circle of friends and acquaintances, that those who say I'm a black and white person, it's black and white with me, right? That those people often are the ones who do not break out of the box. They don't question the rules. They want to be upstanding citizens. They want to be good. And that's kind of where you get into a little bit of trouble, because you're being good for other people. You are putting yourself in this box of, things are black and white because the gray is uncomfortable. And the gray, you think that, a good person knows right and wrong, black and white. There is no gray.
And I was just having a conversation with one of my girlfriends, and she was talking about her boyfriend's ex-wife and how I don't know what the whole story was, but she did something that she just really viewed it as wrong. And my friend is very spiritual and a psychic, by the way. And she's like, I know it's not wrong, Isabelle, but she's a mother. How could she have done that? And I said to her, I said, you know, is there a time in your life where you were so clouded by fear that you did something not typical of yourself, right? Going to Daniel's statement of, how did they not know that was wrong? That is not the way to behave. That is not how society works, right? I've heard that like countless of times in my life, like why rules are so important. If we didn't have rules, we would have chaos, and everyone should behave a certain way or look away a certain way or act a certain way. And I just, I think it's great when those rules are shattered. And sometimes it's painful and sometimes it's really freeing and liberating. I always like to bring up this notion for my friends when they're uncomfortable with change. And I said, imagine this, everyone. Women used to wear long dresses to the ankles for hundreds of years, people. Not just, for a decade. Fashion changes very frequently here now in our time period. But can you imagine the parents of those flapper girls not wearing a corset, not wearing a bra, wearing a basically nightgown, an undergarment as a dress above the knees, right? Like that is so radical. And now we think nothing of it. Now there's mini skirts and long skirts and short skirts, and people, women wear pants, and, we're way more free in clothes. And even men's fashion has maybe not gone as drastic as the women's fashion. But men, you're kind of pigeonholed into pants, shirts, maybe not suits anymore. Now it's business casual. And now with the whole COVID thing, so maybe pajamas are going to be the new norm. But yeah, I hope that helps you guys to know that truth is always expanding. Let's go to the next slide. A black and white perception of truth no longer serves us in this time of the ascension or awakening. You can see that this new conditioned view of truth is limiting and fear-based. It is not vibrationally aligned with the higher dimensions that we are meant to explore. Humanity is coming online, and now it's time to upgrade our programming. Daniel, love this message. This message was actually downloaded to me from my non-physical team, that I am really changing the code of the programming, the software for humanity, and that the programming of MS-DOS, I'm a geek, guys. I used to do IT for a living. And I remember working on computers, and you literally had to type in on a black screen commands. And then it went to Windows, and it was a GUI interface, and, registry edit and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. But our software programs have changed on our computer, our hardware, and our bodies is our hardware. And when the software changes, or our perceptions, our programs, your body will change. Just like cars changed with computers in our cars. Our cars are very different from those 1950s cars. There's some commonalities in that car, like a steering wheel and wheels and doors to get into the car, right? You can recognize a 1950s car and say, oh, that's a car. And you'll still be able to recognize the human body and say, oh, that's a human body. But just like our programming is changing, our hardware will have to change. And that will just be a natural thing. So I do want to mention that we are going through the Grand Ascension. And I hope you're excited for it. Do you want to add?
Oh, definitely. So let's look at a more common example of the hardware. So let's look at the old-timey telephone, right? And this is going back to that black and white perception of truth. That phone was designed to do one thing only. You picked up the receiver and you talked on the phone, okay? So that's a very rigid, single use of that software, of that technology. Now compare that to the smartphone and everything that you can do. Now, there are things that today we consider science fiction, but that when we get the future upgrades, when we suspend our disbelief, when we expand our view of the truth, we're going to be able to teleport naturally. We're going to be able to be telepathic. We will have contact with our intergalactic brothers and sisters because we're shedding that old programming that is the black and white, that's fixed, that's rigid, right? And empowering ourselves to be able to have those greater explorations. And just look at your smartphone. Every time you forget that, look at all the wonderful things you can do with this rectangular box. You know, versus what we grew up with, at least those of us that are young or older.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great example. I mean, you can look at computers, you know, our computers still have like a memory and RAM and a CP processor. Even the new ones. I just bought a computer recently and I did have to look up like what things were being called a little bit. And I'm like, oh, that's what they mean by this, you know, because everyone uses acronyms. But you are being upgraded. And it's interesting to think that your beliefs are your programs. Your thoughts, your ideas, what you think is true could be a limited program that's running behind the scenes. All right, let's go to that next slide. This is the upgraded programming that will serve us in the ascension. It is the spectrum of truth. Just like a rainbow, truth has a spectrum of frequencies. Our minds are shifting from a desire to know just the facts to a desire to be curious as we ascend and evolve as a collective. Yeah, Daniel, I've personally have seen people awakening in different ways and reaching out to me who were definitely asleep, you know, a year ago. And my friend called me out of the blue and her son is experiencing out-of-body experiences. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, holy moly, this is like so unexpected. It's exciting for me because I felt like I was like that first girl experiencing her menstrual cycle, and like none of my classmates were experiencing that joy. And so now more and more people are becoming more aware and curious and awake. I think it's great. I can't imagine what we're going to create as an awake collective. What do you think?
Well, I think that as an awake collective, that we're going to really realize and tune ourselves into how malleable the universe is. All these multiple timelines, all these multiple outcomes. And I know that you were having a conversation, I think, with that same friend earlier who shifted her perspective and realized in a particular situation that the other person also shifted, because when we release control, right? And when we shift away from that black and white, okay, it's right or wrong, it's their way is not my way, and there's conflict, and then we can kind of be still or go within and be curious, then we really unlock like all of this potentiality.
There is a field of potentiality, and when you open up your mind, your soul, your inner being has a grander field of potentiality to bring you wonderful experiences. When you confine yourself to a certain belief, your inner being is kind of boxed in, believe it or not, because there are rules, not rules, but laws, how the universe has been created by source. And one of those is your beliefs create your reality. So if you are very rigid in your beliefs, well, then you will have a very limited kind of reality, unless it's your soul purpose and your destiny, right? Because your soul will always get you to the gate, like I like to say. So they may need something drastic to happen to you, to communicate with you, to awaken you, to open you up. I always say, listen to your inner being, listen to your intuition, because if you don't, they are limited. You might get hit by a bus or have like a near-death experience, that kind of thing, to awaken you, because your soul, which is you want to live your purpose. You definitely want to live your purpose, and your soul will do anything to get you to live your purpose, which is great, because like if you're worried about your purpose, my friends, just relax. Your soul will get you to your purpose. It's all good. But I say, be a willing participant. Open up that spectrum of truth, play. Open up your field of possibilities. Why not experience magic? All right, let's go to the next slide. In this time of awakening, we are becoming more conscious. As we start to perceive truth from a higher perspective, we integrate into oneness. Daniel, what do you mean we're integrating into oneness?
So in other words, when you really start to tune into the spectrum of truth, and where you are along that spectrum, where someone else is, then you realize that we really are a collective. We're not just a random bunch of people having individual experiences. And at this time during the ascension process, we're going into oneness, where we really are going to resonate all across that spectrum of truth. And it's just like there's different densities, and we're going from third density into fourth density and into the higher densities. But really and truly, and this is going back to quantum physics, some aspect of ourselves exists in every one of those densities. We're just remembering, and we're able to go more into it the more that we can get away from the 3D thinking into the nonlinear or higher perspective.
Yeah. Saint Germain works with me that the linear thinking is definitely limited. But if you can imagine thinking spherically or multidimensionally, or to me, when I first started, because it was hard, because we are very much conditioned to train to be thinking very linearly, is notice water is really fluid, and it goes in many directions, and it moves, and it goes in waves, right? It's not a straight line. Rivers are never a straight line, right? There's bends, and it moves and flows. Energy is everywhere, all at once. And when you can understand or think energetically instead of on and off, right or wrong, one truth, right? And you start thinking multidimensionally or spherically, it does move you into oneness because you understand that we are all the same energy, that you can connect telepathically to another person, that you can feel their vibration, that you understand just like air in your house has different, there's your air in your bedroom, your air in your bathroom, right? It still feels separate, but it's still all one of air, right? It is hard because we're in this physical density, but if you can just kind of be a little more open and knowing that nothing is on and off and that it's always in a state of flux, hopefully that will help you expand gracefully into the oneness state, because that is where we are heading, into the oneness state. All right, let's listen to the next slide, or go into the next slide. Let's take an example from everyday life that proves that truth isn't binary. Let's look at this coffee cup. From your perspective, it is too hot or just right, because I like my coffee lukewarm and not piping hot. I might look at the steam rising from the cup and want to wait a little bit before I take my first sip, but I know plenty of people who wouldn't let that deter them. Daniel, I'm laughing because, so Daniel and I are in Connecticut together, and we've been having a lot of meals together, and I have noticed that Daniel's like Goldilocks, which I just want to let you know, my non-physical team calls me Goldilocks too, because I like things just right for me, and he likes things just right for him. I can't drink cold coffee. If it's lukewarm, I'm not drinking it, which is perfect for Daniel, because that's when he wants to drink his coffee. In fact, I have to throw out the last couple of sips of coffee because it's too cold, and I like to get a fresh cup. But this is a great example for them. I love it.
Right, and it's that same image, exactly the same identical image. It's just our reaction to it. For me, seeing that steam rising off of the cup, it does feel cozy. It feels like a perfect cup of coffee in winter. But for me personally, I would look at that cup and go, okay, that's really cozy looking, but I just need it to cool down a little.
Yeah.
And someone else is like, oh my God, ready for my first sip.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the next one. The coffee cup is too hot or just right, depending on how you like your coffee. It's simply coming from your own perspective. Now, if you like your coffee piping hot, do you judge those who like it lukewarm as wrong? Or can you see that you're both right? If you can see it this way, you are beginning to integrate truth as a spectrum. Congratulations. Yeah, I think this is really good. And I'm asking you, my listeners, to play with this day, not tomorrow, this day. I want you to look at things in multiple levels. Look, whatever, brushing your teeth, whoever you're interacting with, and seeing it as a game right now. How many perspectives can you see in your physical reality? So I want you to play. And then go ahead and reach out to me, because I want to know what perspectives you came up with because you were playing this game. Daniel?
Well, and the other thing too is that kind of realize kind of where you catch yourself going into judgment when it's something more than just a cup of coffee. When, of course, right now, at this present moment of time, we're coming off the election here in the United States, and there's a lot of charged opinions.
Oh, yeah, the election is great. Oh, I dare you guys to play with the election.
Yeah.
Oh, and definitely play with COVID. Oh,
yeah.
And play with the mask thing, too. I want you to play with the mask and the rules and quarantine and all of that. Just play with it, because I'm sure those are such polarizing viewpoints. Like either you're all for masks or you're not for masks, or you're for Trump or you're for Joe, or whatever it is. I don't care what your spectrum of truth is, but can you see the other perspective and see it as true and not make them as wrong? Ooh, that is so good. Oh, I love it. Okay. All right, let's go to the next slide. This is how you create the template to better understand the universe and the higher dimensions. A cup of coffee might seem trivial compared to the epic scale of the cosmos, but it is a great tool of understanding, as are many other ordinary things in your everyday life. It just requires a little more curiosity on your part to see them in a new way. Daniel, I love this image to show how, it really does start. You can start off with something small and expand into something greater. And that is really what the ascension is. It's a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. And, before you know it, you're really experiencing magic. I mean, that's been my journey. I don't know about your experience.
Well, I really think for me, it's kind of interesting how I'm finally getting to the point where it's like what my first spiritual teacher taught me. It's not about what it's about. Or it's not just about that thing. Mm-hmm. It's not just about that cup of coffee. Like you see in the image, the woman holding the coffee cup, and maybe she's looking down and she's contemplating her life in that moment. Mm-hmm. The software that we have, actually, to use quantum physics terms, it is the microcosm of the macrocosm.
Yes. Yep. It really is. And they had me study fractals. I'm a very visual learner, my friends out there, and I don't know if you can relate to that, but look up fractals and understand repeating patterns and part of being separate but part of the whole. That's why I had to study so many things to integrate this concept. But, when Daniel was pointing out this coffee cup, like she's holding this coffee cup and maybe she's contemplating, I was thinking, oh, maybe she's on a first date, and she'll look at this coffee as a remembrance or a happy thing, and it's way more than just a beverage. That's where she met the love of her life, is in a coffee house. And so maybe when she smells coffee, she's always reminded of her loved one. But it doesn't matter. We're just playing, and we're trying to get you to open and expand. All right, let's go to the next slide. When you integrate within the spectrum of truth, you embrace the spectrum of inner truth in each individual. You are part of a dynamic and extraordinary collective, being a human. It's part of the reason why a great many non-physical entities want to incarnate on planet Earth. We have forgotten who we truly are, but we are now starting to remember. And now we can see the beauty and harmony of each individual frequency. I agree with you. I remember when we were little, it was really encouraged in us to believe in ourselves and be unique and be different. And then somewhere in secondary school, you did not want to be different. You didn't believe in yourself.
Right.
We kind of like totally reversed that. But
Yes, we did.
little kids, 3-year-olds, they are happy to be who they are, and they don't care if somebody looks different from them. They're just like, oh, that's great. Yeah.
Right. And then just going back to that image, so we see the human body shape in all of these different colors. And for me, my eye goes first to that green and blue because those are my favorite colors. So maybe somehow I see that human shape in those colors and I'm more gravitated towards that. But I can appreciate that it really takes the whole spectrum to really understand humanity. And it really is coming together and it's embracing each other as far as, what every individual's frequency is, what their perspective is. And to interlock, if you look at it closely, they're interlocking arms. And even as diverse as they may be, they are one across that spectrum.
Yeah, and my non-physical team not only talks about like the spectrum of frequencies that shapes different physical matter, but it also the frequencies of emotions, and not to judge anger or happiness as wrong emotions, that it's just a spectrum of emotions, and that all is well, all is wonderful. And so if you can embrace different aspects of truth, different aspects of humanity, different aspects even within yourself, which is really, you have to do that first. You have to embrace the things that you don't like about yourself. This is ascending you. This is expanding you. This is really experiencing the magic of all that is. And so I hope this empowers you to step into seeing different frequencies. All right, let's go to the next slide. Here's the higher truth. We are all beings of light that simultaneously exist across multiple dimensions. To fully explore this dimension, it was necessary to forget who we truly are. However, it's time for us to wake up to the truth because we have chosen to incarnate in the time of the Great Awakening. There are many other beings of light who are eager to greet us when we finally ascend as a collective. We are each being given the upgraded software to make us a vibrational match to them. We are simply not meant to continue to cycle of unconscious reincarnation. Sorry, guys. But this is true. I do past life regression, so I'm beyond not believing we're eternal, me personally. But again, who cares what Isabelle Zimmerman thinks? It's what you think. To be unconscious is not aware that you're eternal, not aware that you are greater than the person that you see in the mirror. You are way more than the person that you see in the mirror. You can't remember all of your lives, or maybe you are beginning to remember a life or an experience, or I don't know where you are in your journey, but you are so powerful you can't even imagine. And this is the time of the Great Awakening, and your soul understood what was happening here. And this image, when Daniel was putting this presentation for you guys, I love this image because it's infinity. It is eternal. There is no beginning and there's no end. And it's interesting to think that truth is also infinite. just like we are. It's hard to feel that right now because you guys feel very human. And I get it, because me too. I can't tell you how many times I go into my physical reality, or I get caught up in like my day-to-day, life, and I'm like, oh, that's right. There is a great ascension going on. That's right. I am way more than Isabelle. I get caught up into the illusion all the time. What about you, Daniel?
Oh, definitely. I get caught up too. And for me, being a very visual person, when I found this image of the rainbow infinity, I was really excited. And it made me realize, and my team downloaded to me, that I exist at every point in that infinity loop.
Yeah.
Isabelle, you exist in every point. We all do. So we are merging and coming together in different ways. And maybe the way that you relate to your neighbor down the street, that maybe, you sit on the porch and drink a cup of coffee or tea, or how you relate to your colleague at work, it doesn't matter. It is that spectrum of energy that moves and connects all of us. It is all that is, and we ourselves are all that is. We are the center of our own universe.
Yeah. And, when you go into these spiritual teachings, they will say this over and over and over and over again. Look, my friends, it just takes a while to process. It just takes a while to integrate. And wherever you are in this spectrum of truth, it doesn't matter. It is a journey and process for all of us. And I am super excited. You're with me and Daniel going on this journey. So excited. Okay, let's go to the next slide. When we allow ourselves to explore consciousness more fully, our energy fields naturally expand. In turn, makes us more aware of other dimensions. This is why meditation and soul work is so important. So within, so without, and so above, so below. And
Correct.
That is Thoth, my dear friend. And this is really true. I don't think, I just want to pause around this to help our friends out there listening. Not only do you expand your mind, okay? Let's just pretend you're expanding your mind. You're like, okay, Isabelle, I'm expanding my perceptions of truth, and I'm seeing that coffee cup is right for other people and my neighbors, right? What do you mean my energy fields are expanding? What do you mean that I'm going to be aware of other dimensions? Oh, my friends, the magic is so cool, but you are expanding your field of potentiality. That field of potentiality, let's imagine it as a field, like a farm field. Yep. Let's just give it physical matter here. You have a farm, okay? When you expand your mind and heart, when you open up, guess what happens? You get more land. I know. Shocking. It just appears. Somebody leaves you the land, the forest is cleared, you find out that you own more land, you had no idea, you were taught like this was your land, this was your property, this was your boundaries, and then all of a sudden your boundaries expand. And you're like, whoa, right? But this happens energetically. When you do your soul work, when you go within and meditate, and for me, I used a program called Heart Math because it's biofeedback. It tells you when you're a level of consciousness. But when you do this, my friends, this really opens up different opportunities and possibilities in your physical experience. Daniel, can you expand? How did meditating or going under, I I hypnotized you. I met you, right?
Right.
What was your experience?
So prior to doing the quantum hypnosis with you, Isabelle, in that first remote session especially, so I would have like these little tiny epiphanies, downloads, right? It was just like a little chunk, a little piece. And in doing going under, that regression opened up and unlocked a lot of doors for me that maybe in my walking everyday life I just didn't have access to it. Right?
Right. And so I like how the fact that you were already psychic, you were already getting downloads, but you didn't have the belief or the truth that that was real.
Correct.
Right? Your perception of reality was psychics, maybe that's real, maybe that's not real for me. Maybe you believed in psychics, right? But you didn't believe you were a psychic. Or maybe you believe in past lives, but you weren't sure if you had a past life. I didn't say thoughts were rational, my friends. I'm just saying, but that's how it happens, right?
Yes.
I have to, now I've done so many sessions for past lives that I get to see an overarching theme with souls, what they experience, why things happen in that life, why things are happening in this life. I like to say when I do these past life regressions, my experience is I'm seeing the director's cut of the movie. And it's funny because I actually really like watching the director's cuts of movies, like why they chose a certain ending or actor or that kind of thing. But this is a good example for you to understand, my friends, that when you expand your mind, you are expanding an energy field. I hope that is a good incentive of you to do your soul work, my Jedis. All right, let's go to the next slide. Now it's important, as you learn about the spectrum of truth, that some things will always be based in fear and control, and therefore untrue. This is why discernment is so important. Daniel, can you expand on this?
Sure. So this is getting away from judgment, of right and wrong, into getting into discernment. Discernment is not saying that something is wrong. Okay. Discernment is just being able to objectively and neutrally look at those things and really connect to our heart space.
Yes.
And really connect to those intuitions, those gut feelings. And here's the thing, and this is one of the interesting things about the spectrum of truth. There are ancient beliefs that, I know it's shocking, that actually were truths that finally it took us in modern society to get to quantum physics to understand.
Yeah.
The consciousness is not only in the brain.
Yeah.
It's in the heart.
Yeah.
It's in the spleen.
Yeah.
Every organ of your body has a different aptitude of discernment. So if you find yourself running these kind of like what I call the if-then scenarios or racing thoughts, and go into your heart space, because in your heart space, from that coherence, you'll be able to discern.
Yeah. I think racing thoughts, repeating stories. I always say, if you are saying the words should, could, and would, that is ego. And if you are saying this or that, that is binary. You want to say and. You don't want to say or think or. It's okay if you do, we're saying Just trying to get you to that quantum state. If you would like to play in the quantum state, let me put it to you this way. You can start to say and. Don't limit yourself. You can have and, not this or that, right? It's okay, it's okay, it's okay. That's another mantra of mine. But when something vibrates within you or resonates with you, that is also another form of discernment. Somebody can say something and just say, is that true for me? Does that resonate for me? Not judge them as wrong, because that is a spectrum of truth. That is their perception, and it may be very, very true for them, right? But you can also say, does this resonate with me? Is that based in fear and control? Is that based in love? Is it inclusive? Is it allowing? Is it in the flow? Am I being allowing? Am I being judgmental? Am I judging it as wrong? Am I being binary? And again, even if you are, it's okay. But your awareness of it is key. And that, my friend, is Jedi work. All right, let's go to the next slide. I recently asked my guides, what is the relationship between discernment and clarity? The download I received from them is that discernment is the means by which one becomes clear about something they ponder. Discernment is the tool. Clarity is the result. The more that you practice discernment, the more truth will reveal itself to you, especially the truth that resonates at a higher frequency. I love this message, Daniel. This is so, it resonates with me. It's very true to me. When you guys are in fear, or even when I'm in fear, I think of fear as constricting. I think of fear as foggy and unclear and confusion. And I'm scared. Yeah, fear is dense and thick and scary. And I like this relationship between discernment and clarity. Yeah. Did they give you, did they show that to you visually?
Well, I should explain that the rainbow for me, so my guide's the oracle. Rainbows always seem to come into play. And as a matter of fact, I look at a street light and I can see a rainbow halo around it at night.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have, they send me rainbows everywhere in my water. I'm always out, like, even if I'm out with friends, they're like, oh my gosh. I'm like, yeah, rainbows follow me. But you know what's interesting in the science community? They actually take a prism of crystal and put it in front of a microscope that bends the light to determine the spectrum of gases within a star.
Right.
Yeah. And the rainbow light does bend. It's a bending of light, different angles.
Right. So what a great metaphor for discernment, because you realize that light can be bent. So our perception, if we're open enough, can be bent or turned a certain way or another way to be able to see truths from multiple perspectives. We are multiple. We are beings that are multiple dimensions. Yeah, and if you study light, which is energy, my dear ones out there, light is a particle in a wave, right? It's got this duality to it. And that leads you, the study of light led to quantum physics. It was Max Planck wanted just to know, when you ride a bicycle and the bicycle comes closer to you, why doesn't it shift in color? That was
that was started him on his journey. Just a simple question. Why does it stay white? Shouldn't it go to red to blue, the spectrum color shifts? And that led him down the rabbit hole to quantum physics. So discernment is the tool that allows you to tell the truth from a falsehood. I think that's a really good tool to go into your heart center, understand, is it coming from a loving place? Find that inner wisdom. I think it's the best thing to do. It feels great.
And just to say one more thing about this. So we want to be clear about things, but sometimes we want the universe to make things clear for us. And what the universe is telling us is use your discernment. They want you to be an active participant in this experience.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. It's very collaborative. Yeah. Thanks, Daniel. All right, let's go to the next slide. This is the result of you shifting your perception of truth away from binary thinking. You will keep expanding and growing in consciousness. This will reveal more of the universe and the higher truths. Daniel, I love this image. Love it, love it. Her holding the star, the ocean. It's wonderful.
Yeah. So one thing that this image resonates with me is that how we're not just having this small human experience, right? We're part of the cosmos. We are part of the fabric. And we can hold the light as well for ourselves. We have that capability to have that. And for me, one thing that is really interesting is I learned that musicians, artists, that typically they have a very large auric field.
I did not know that.
Yes, yeah. Like their aura is like, it goes on like several feet or meters if you live, in another country that uses that measurement. But yeah, and in a way, it's because when they perform in front of that audience, they connect with that audience. Think about, you don't want to just play for the front row. You want to play or bring all of your talent for those in the nosebleed section, right?
Yeah, of course.
So, we have that potential to keep expanding. The more that we come into alignment, the more that we gain clarity, use discernment, step away from that binary thinking, and really integrate ourselves into that wave of the spectrum of truth, we really, from this physical density, have that ability to align with the universe. Yeah,
we really do. And I have to say, there is so much to expand into. There are so many dimensions and experiences for you to expand into. And gosh, I really hope that this presentation helps you, inspires you. Daniel, thank you so much for channeling this and putting this together and having me being part of it. I really am so excited.
Well, thank you. And for those who are listening on Isabelle's podcast, you can go to her Attracting Wisdom Facebook page, or you can visit my blog, which is answersfromtheoracle.com. And then we'll post the images there for you to be able to see them. So whether you're seeing this on Facebook or listening on Podbean or another podcast format, we really thank you for joining us today to learn all about the spectrum of truth.
Yeah, and maybe we'll even post this on YouTube so they can hear
definitely.
it. Yeah, and they can see it. So they can look at that. We are giving you different channels.
Yes.
assimilate this information. Well, until next time, let us know how you like this information. I have a feeling Daniel will be creating another course like this or body of work. And until next time, love you all. Mwah!
Thank you, guys.